Welcome, welcome. I appreciate you joining me, Mr. Ben Armstrong, better known as BitBoy Crypto, an OG in the crypto content creation space. We have a lot to talk about because what we're seeing in the world of crypto right now is there is an absolute war raging on. I'm happy to be able to speak with you.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot going on. I mean, I wish we were speaking under better circumstances, of course. But yeah, there is definitely a war raging. It's a battle between what we call the crypto purists and the stock market 2.0. And we're trying to kick those people out, and they're helping themselves out the door, it looks like. So
definitely. I am excited, particularly excited for this because we got connected and it all of a sudden sounds like a lot of the things that I was talking about of the craziness in the world of meme stocks. There's some similarities of what you think's going on in kind of that underlying data set in the world of crypto. So all the viewers listening to this, I think there's going to be some interesting tidbits. But before we get to that, to maybe the people who need a quick refresher, can you give us that TLDR of what went down with FTX? Like if you had to explain it to someone 1, 2, 3 minutes, could you give us the story of kind of the early November until about now?
Greed. There you go. That's the story. It's a story of greed. It's a story of power. It's a story of money laundering. It's a story of political donations. And all this stuff is proven. None of it is, hyperbole. None of it is, we're exaggerating. Even the politicians, Maxine Waters was on TV a couple nights ago on the news, and she said, yeah, we think there's something wrong with this money that was given. Pretty much was not to put words in her mouth. That's pretty much what she said. And so, it really, you have to go back to Alameda Research. Alameda Research was a venture capital arm, or it actually was where all this started. So it wasn't an arm at that point. It was just a VC, firm. And they had made their money investing in a lot of different projects, including Solana, which there's going to be some stuff coming out about Solana in the next few weeks. People are not going to like either because the story has got so many tentacles. It keeps going. We found out some more stuff about what they were doing as well. But basically, when it comes to Alameda, they created a company called FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried was the original. I think he was technically in the beginning, he was the CEO of Alameda. He ended up moving to the CEO of FTX. He owned almost all of both companies. He owned a lot of it. He was the mastermind. Well, he was the front man at least for it, and he definitely did have a role in some of the masterminding stuff. But what he did is they created basically an online casino, which was FTX. It was the casino for the degenerate gambling from Alameda, and they would pass money back and forth. They created the FTT token, which is interesting. You look at Binance Coin, for instance, with Binance BNB. It has a utility, it serves for gas on the BNB chain. And then also on top of that, you get trading fee discounts when you use it on the site for Binance. FTT had no utility. It was just a token there. It was like, why? Because all they did was wash trade it back and forth with Alameda. And so there's a lot to the story, but one of the aspects of this was that if you look at the ratios of longs to shorts on FTX, it was drastically on the side of shorts. It's almost like an infinite amount of shorts on that site compared to other places. You're like, why? Well, what they were doing is for a lot of these projects, they were creating synthetic perpetual futures contracts. And they were also creating literally counterfeit coins for some of these projects that they listed on there. There's plenty of other predatory business practices they were doing, which we could get into. However, what they were doing is they were counterfeiting the supply on the exchange. So there was only so much really liquid. They were just putting zeros and ones and saying, hey, this is how many coins we had. So what happens is that their insolvency hole kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because when they would counterfeit the coins, what people would come in and withdraw. And every time they withdrew, they were actually withdrawing real assets. And so eventually it was a little insolvency hole. It got a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. Alameda had a back door built in where they could borrow as much money as they want so they could pull any of the real liquidity. And eventually it just caught up with them. We had been working on a story with NBC News with Gretchen Morgensen about everything we knew about FTX. This was I think like November 1st or October 30th or somewhere around there, Halloween. That's when we started down this rabbit hole with the insolvency and with Gretchen Morgensen. And what happens is in the middle of us doing this story, we put out a tweet saying, get your money off FTX, whatever you do, take your money off. So we were warning people. October 29th was when we did that tweet. We started finding out about this stuff. Well, what happens is is CZ from Binance just blew the whole thing up. We were working on this story and we were going to try to introduce it in a way that didn't totally wreck the market because we were being sensitive of the people that, number one, had money in the market, number one, had money on FTX. And we were trying to slowly but surely tell people get their money off. And then I believe Brett Harrison, the former CEO of FTX US, he's the whistleblower. He stepped down the day after we released a video, which we can talk about in a second, about the federal bit license legislation that Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to do. The next day, Brett Harrison stepped down or got fired from FTX US. The next day, he followed me on Twitter. I think that was a sign. He was a good guy. He was trying to get out. He wanted to tell somebody. He ended up not messaging me. But the point is that when Brett Harrison left, and that insolvency hole kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, he then blew the whistle to CZ about the books there. And also he had internal information about Sam trying to throw CZ and Binance under the bus. He dumped all of his FTT tokens, which were just an inflated nothing coin that, FTX and Alameda trade back and forth, and it destroyed the liquidity. It dropped, I think, 85% in one day. People lost a bunch of money. They had to freeze withdrawals on the site. People saw the insolvency hole, and, the rest is history.
So quick question there. Obviously, something had to happen to get you, and really even at this point, NBC, interested in looking into that. What was it that tipped you off that you're like, I think I need to investigate FTX a little bit more?
Yeah. So we were the ones that tipped NBC off, and we got them involved. I had reached out to a guy, Mark Kohrs. Some people know him, a big famous short seller, but he's worked with some financial crimes and stuff like that. And he's the one that got me hooked up with Gretchen and NBC. Because obviously he's been going down this rabbit trail of Sam for a while also. So here's what happened. We have a bill, a federal bill. We hope it's going to turn into an amendment. It's not registered yet. We're still trying to raise money for it. Everybody in crypto is going to love it. It's a mechanism to create crypto regulation. So we want to do it in a decentralized way. We want to be where there are people in crypto that we respect that together jointly make the right decisions on crypto regulation along with regular regulators, I guess, with government regulators. So we have a say at the table is what we want in crypto for regulation. So we need funding for the bill. Bills are expensive. It's $3.6 million for us to raise all the money for the bill. About $200,000 to get it registered. And then we can kind of move from there. Well, the thing is, FTX seemed to be maybe a good player in the space. Everybody thought they were good up until the last 2 months. When whispers started coming out. And so we were like, let's reach out to FTX because Sam had just been on Capitol Hill. And I still didn't know personally what I felt about him. I always felt like there was a little something off. And if people watch my channel for a while, I said it all the time, like, just can't make my mind up on this guy for some reason. And so we send our bill to Brett Harrison. And Brett Harrison says, yeah, we actually like this. We'll send it over to Mark Wetjen. He's a former CFTC commissioner that is their policy head. Well, basically they sit on it for 3 weeks, which is very weird in the world of politics. These bills move very quickly. As fast as you can get them registered, you want to move them because somebody's always trying to do what you're doing. And so Wetjen sat on for 3 weeks. Our main, one of our main political backers. So it's bipartisan. We've got a major Democratic backer. We have a major Republican backer, and people know these names. Okay. Well, one of them is like, give me his number. I'll call him and find out what's going on. So they get Wetjen's number. They call him and like, what's going on with this bill? He said, we're never going to fund your bill. We actually have our own bill. And really what we want is, to the politician, we want you to join our team and help push our bill, which is basically a federal bit license. This is the first time I had heard this. I was like, what? And of course, our backer's our backer. These people are loyal to us. And so they immediately called our team and said what was going on. Like, no, I'm not going to work for them. That's crazy. And so this was September 18th is the day I got this information. And I said, federal bit, that's the worst. That destroys decentralization. That destroys peer-to-peer transactions. So we started making videos slowly but surely, not all at once, because we wanted to protect the source back then. Now, obviously, like, we're still protecting the source's name, but it's not as big of a deal because FTX has collapsed, So what happens is I start talking about this federal bit license 5 weeks before anybody knows anything about it. And so I put out a full video about 2 weeks into that The next day is when Brett Harrison steps down. The next day is when, he follows me on Twitter. And then 3 weeks later, Sam puts out his famous political regulation manifesto. And so within that, there's a very interesting line is the very last tweet in that tweet thread, which was, by the way, we're definitely for decentralization and we're definitely for peer-to-peer transactions. Well, you go read the website. That's not what it says. It actually says, hey, we're looking forward to blocking people from transactions. And then when you look at exactly those are the two things that I attacked for 5 weeks that he was doing, basically his way of softening the language and saying he may know something, but we're not doing that. So Eric Voorhees gets invited to debate. Eric Voorhees, OG in crypto, one of the most respected people in the entire space. He gets invited to debate SBF on the Bankless podcast. And so he goes on there. I've never seen a more one-sided debate in my life. Eric Voorhees would sit there for 10 minutes, let SBF ramble. He would come in with one or two sentences and totally wreck SBF, and he would have to scramble and he would talk for 10 more minutes. And during that debate was the first time SBF started talking about licensure. No, we think the New York BitLicense didn't work because it was on the state level. People realized we knew what we were talking about. And so I didn't have some kind of crazy investigative team where we stumbled across all this. When people realized that I had the information 5 weeks before anybody else, they knew that I knew something and they knew that I was preaching against what he was doing. All of his enemies started contacting me. All of his enemies started sending me Telegram messages, Signal messages, session messages, Twitter DMs. And I collected the best of those and started talking to these projects. And we realized Sam got a lot of enemies. And we also realized some people have been trying to blow the whistle on their business practices since March of last year, at least year and a half. Wow. And no one would listen. Nobody would listen. And so we ended up getting connected with Hussein Faraj, he's the CEO of NewCoin, New Genesis Protocol. Nobody's ever heard of that project because FTX destroyed it. That's why you haven't heard of it. And, they shorted it all the way from 38. It had never traded below 35 cents. They put it on liquid. They shorted it in a day all the way to a penny. Totally destroyed the project. And Hussein is not a poor guy, right? He turned down a $40 million settlement offer from them.
Wow.
All he did was he went through negotiations of a settlement with them just to collect information and just to get audio and video recordings and emails and texts. And so he's been building this case for about a year and just waiting for the right time. And he gave us all the evidence and we reached out to NBC and, the rest there, is yet to completely play out. We're going to be putting a lot of that evidence on our website this week. We're actually right now, we're literally working with our webmaster to get that done. It might take a few days and maybe next week before it's all up. But, I know you've seen some of the evidence. We've sent you some of it. And, it's all real, it's authentic, and, it's pretty unquestionable. There's a very, very strong case against a lot of players that are involved in this.
That's awesome. So just for everyone listening, I want to make sure we're getting this timeline right. So if we rewind, we'll just call it like early October. At that point, that's really when your flags really started to spike. It sounds like before that you had some questions, but it was more of you had a bill that would, in your opinion, and it sounds like many people's opinion, be beneficial to the world of crypto, specifically within the US. And then it sounds like through the way of FTX, there was like some backstabbery going on. So you started to look into it a little bit more. Early November comes around. And I believe it was Ian Allison from CoinDesk who somehow got his name on the assets and liabilities at Alameda. And then that led to Binance, CZ, the CEO of Binance, saying, hey, we're selling it. And then obviously we're fast forwarding to this point where we know that there was no Chinese wall between FTX and Alameda. They were using each other's money. They were doing way more than that. And at this point, it's probably going to go down as one of the largest cases of financial fraud in the history of man. I previously inappropriately connected it to Enron and Madoff, and I say it's erroneous because this is even worse. Like it's absolutely insane. And
your timeline is pretty close. We knew somewhere around October 23rd, 24th. Okay. That's when the antennas really went up because we had connected with. So there's 5 projects we've talked to. We can't name all, 6 actually. We can't name all of them because some are under NDA and they won't violate those, even though the company's collapsed. I wish they would come out and talk. Okay. Their lawyers have told them not to. basically, once we started examining all the pieces of evidence, we realized the entire market for FTX was fake. And once we realized the entire market was fake, that's by October 29th, when I put that tweet out, we knew that it was insolvent. And it was just a matter of time before it came out. So that was just the one thing in the timeline. We knew before CoinDesk. We knew about a full week and a half before CoinDesk did. We were very disappointed that CoinDesk and CZ did what they did, because it sped up our timeline on how we had to operate to push things out. We were wanting to, at the end of this month, do like 60-minute style interviews with these projects and put it out. The insolvency got sped up so quickly, and we were just we wanted people to ease out. We're starting with our audience and then push. Eventually, the insolvency would have been met, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if it would have been a bank run or whatever, but we really tried to do it in a way that wouldn't wreck everybody. And, unfortunately, CoinDesk put out that article. Now, I'm not saying unfortunately from a perspective of we didn't want people to have the information. It's just they kind of 10x the crisis.
Gotcha. Yeah. With this, trying to and truly, this is one of the most complicated knots. And I feel like as you pull on a thread, it does get really crazy. Yeah. One of the things that I found particularly interesting is a gentleman by the name of Dan FriedBerg. So to everyone listening right now, there's a good chance they maybe heard this name and forget how he's connected. But the more I was looking into it, and also based on some of the information that's been fed my way, he seems to be a very pivotal player. So could you, I guess, do the listeners a favor and explain your understanding of how he fits into this, and maybe some conjecture of how the storyline for him might play out?
Yeah. I've definitely got thoughts on both those things. Dan FriedBerg is, I say FriedBerg. Some people pronounce it FriedBerg. I'm not sure exactly what the pronunciation is. They did not provide me with a pronunciation key. But Dan FriedBerg, to me, is the key to this entire thing. I would certainly say there's an angle here for us to talk about SBS parents possibly being the masterminds behind all this. Okay. But Dan FriedBerg is the architect for sure. So who Dan FriedBerg is, he was a lawyer for Phil Hellmuth. A lot of people know I'm a big poker player. I make 135th in the main event. Last year was a highlight of my life.
Congrats.
So, well, thank you, man. It was really unbelievable. It was awesome. It was in November last year. And, I always wanted to play in the main event. And then I was the chip leader on day 5, and I got on the TV, and then I lost some pocket aces, and it's whatever. So, but it was really cool. It was really fun. So I love poker. I love Phil Hellmuth. He's one of my favorites. I know a lot of people don't like, they call him the Brad or whatever. Mike Mattisau, the mouth, he never met me, I guess, if they think he's the mouth. And, they were both involved with something called Ultimate Bets. They were promoters. Well, Dan FriedBerg was actually Phil Hellmuth's personal lawyer, and Phil Hellmuth got approached by Ultimate Bet. There's 2 names, something poker, Absolute Poker, and Ultimate Bet, I think is the other one. Okay. But it was basically one network, and he got introduced through Phil Hellmuth to this network. Well, what happens is he comes into the inside of it. I'm not sure if he completely left Phil Hellmuth. He screwed Phil Hellmuth for sure, but what happens is he starts showing them how to build an architecture for a shell company game to be able to protect themselves, because they were about to run the biggest scam in poker history. They created something called God mode. And what's so fascinating is when you break all this down, it is FTX. It's the same exact model. So they created something called God mode, to where players who had God mode, which were people that worked there, they could see the other people's cards. So Mike Mattisau would be like, it's weird. Like, they would just call me in the afternoon and be like, hey, Mike, you want to come play heads up? Like, yeah, sure, we'll go play heads up. And then they'll steal $1 million from him. Now, supposedly they stole $1 million from Mike Mattisau during this God mode thing. Obviously, it wouldn't have been in one session, or he wouldn't have came back, but they would lose sometimes on purpose. I mean, if you're cheating in poker, I mean, people can assume the way that works, like you can't give all your cards away the first time, They might even let him win a few sessions, but ultimately they took $1 million from Mike Mattisau using this where they could see his cards. And so they used this against a lot of big name players that were coming in who had why? Because the big players are the ones that have the 7 figures. And so at some point, people start getting suspicious. And so they have an internal fail-safe that deletes a ton of the data. So they deleted the website. They deleted so much stuff, the servers, they cleaned them, but it was a mechanism that did it, that deleted a lot of the data points. And then, of course, one guy, it was not Dan FriedBerg, I can't remember the guy's name, they basically set him up as the scapegoat for the entire thing, and he's the only one, I believe, that got in trouble. Now, let's compare this to FTX. shell company architecture. You can't even figure out where all the money is with them. SBF has his own companies that he has a ton of Robinhood stocks in, ton of other shares. We don't even know where all that stuff is or what it is. Number two, the God mode. God mode, same thing for FTX. Alameda could see all the trades on FTX. Alameda could see your stop loss. They could see your liquidation point. In your account, they could see everything. It's the same thing in poker. If you see the other person's cards, you win. Well, if you see liquidation points for big traders that have big liquidations, you can win too, because you can force the price right down there and pop it back up, because there's a lot of money on the line here. Third of all, the fail safe. The hack that occurred a couple weeks ago, it was not about where the money went, and that's the misdirection. Some of the money went to CZ, some of it went to Vitalik, some of it went to Kraken. That was to confuse people. It was not about. And look, I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I can tell you exactly how it works. I'm not a tech guy.
Okay.
But it was all about destroying data points that got left behind on FTX. That's what they were doing. They were sending the money out to addresses and cleaning what was going on inside of the FTX website with the servers. There's data points that have been destroyed there. Number four, fall guy. Well, SBF is the fall guy. SBF is going to end up taking the fall for this entire thing. He's certainly part of it. His parents are going to sell him up the river, I believe. But whatever the point is there, what's going to happen with Dan FriedBerg next? So it's the same scam, perpetuated, very clearly same scam. Now you say, what's going to happen to Dan? Well, Dan's cockroach. Okay. He survived the ultimate bet scandal. And by the way, they had Dan on video admitting a lot of the stuff with ultimate bets. That's why we know none of this is conjecture. Okay. He literally on video said that, he's like, maybe we can just pay out the customers $5 million and, that'll be good enough. He was talking about settling with the players because they knew it was a scam. So he's not innocent, but he's good at staying out of jail. He didn't even lose his lawyer license in the state of New York when the ultimate bet scandal, the largest scandal in poker history, when it happened. And so what my feeling is Dan is going to flip, get immunity and tell the tale on Sam and make it seem like Sam was the only person who was involved in it.
So just to tie this all together for everyone listening, Dan was the lawyer for Ultimate Bets. This happened all in, I believe,
he's also the general counsel for FTX. I didn't actually say that.
So he was
general counsel of FTX now.
Early 2000s, he was involved in this massive scam. I believe $40 million with Ultimate Bet. And now he was the chief regulatory officer for FTX and then the legal counselor for Alameda. And it seems like there's a lot of similarities in the story. The only difference is instead of 40 million, he did it at the scale of 40 billion. Like he just added 3 more zeros onto it.
It was a test run. The first one was a test run.
That's ridiculous. So a couple people you brought up here that I want to get a little bit more into is Sam Bankman-Fried's parents. So they were law professors at Stanford. Apparently, they now have millions in assets of real estate in the Bahamas. What's your take on that whole craziness?
Well, they're securities lawyers, and they're also are professors at Stanford. And like they just had like $121 million worth of real estate that they own in the Bahamas.
I guess being a professor pays well.
Exactly. I guess, they used to say like, if you can't learn, then teach or something like that. Well, I guess if you can't get, if you're poor, just teach. And apparently you'll get all the money. So it's very sketchy what's going on there. But it's not just that. It's not just their ties with money. You start looking at what they do. Okay, Sam Bankman-Fried's dad, not only does he did work for them in the regulatory area for FTX and Alameda, but when it comes to the mom has her own political action committee, her own PAC, raising political donations. The dad also literally did legislation, like helped Elizabeth Warren with tax legislation. They've got all these tax shelters, all these homes, and all these offshore places. I wonder what he was doing that for. And the argument can be made, and I don't want to take. This is not about taking Sam off the hook, and this is not about like punishing Sam. We want Sam to be punished for sure, but we also want the problem fixed, which we can get into in a second. But the whole issue here is It's starting to look like maybe his parents have had him doped up on Adderall his entire life and have just been pushing him around and telling him what to do. The aunt, SBF's brother, same thing. They also have their own, political endeavors and their own companies to where they're sending money and donations to the Democratic Party. And as you start to see that this is a poisoned family tree, if you will.
Wow. It's something you said there really, like, it just, the light bulb moment for me. So you have Sam Bankman-Fried's parents. Obviously, the mom runs a PAC. They donate millions and millions of dollars to whatever political people align with them. So I didn't know the story about their dad having kind of that connection with Elizabeth Warren and more of like the tax stuff. Well, in the side of stocks, it's very, very well known that Elizabeth Warren, the current the chairman of the SEC, he's kind of hitching his political wagon to Elizabeth Warren. It's very evident in the world of politics that he wants to be the Secretary of Treasury, probably won't be able to pull it off, but from there, that's strange because then the Alameda CEO, or the most recent one, Caroline Ellison, her dad was Gary Gensler's boss at MIT, where everyone was connected for Sam Bankman-Fried to get connected. So really, all of a sudden, we're starting, it's almost like that meme from Sunny in Philadelphia where you're drawing all those, I guess, the threads everywhere. But like
on the board,
the connection is very, very clear between like politicians taking it. I mean, even right now, I'm not the biggest fan of Maxine Waters, but I have to give it to her. I mean,
me too.
She was calling out 4 of her own House committee members that took money from FTX. So, I mean, we have politicians, we have multi-million-dollar donations, we have the chairman of the SEC, we have presidential hopefuls, we have crazy exchange, I guess, and also hedge fund in the world of crypto and crypto bank fraud going on. This is just ridiculous. Like, this really is. It's so funny that Michael Lewis is making a book on this, and Apple just bought the rights to it because, like, it's going to be a multi-series movie just to wrap your head around how deep this corruption goes, and it's just pure chaos in the world of crypto.
Who's playing me? That's what I want. Listen. You missed one connection, and it's just a small one. But Elizabeth Warren's daughter interned for the SEC.
That's just perfect.
It continues.
Just a little cherry on top. You have to love it.
But look, people need to understand what's coming. I don't think people understand what's coming here. People are talking about people are scared of the crypto regulation, but I actually don't think the crypto regulation is going to happen the way people are thinking it's going to be. I think our bill is going to win, and I think things are going to actually change for the better with regulation. The thing people are not thinking about is who just took over in the House for Congress. Republicans, right? Who have had the House for the last 4 years?
No, the Democrats.
Democrats, right? What did they do with those 4 years? 2 years of Trump collusion hearings, 2 years of January 6 hearings. Okay. What do you think the Republicans are going to do? Democratic money laundering, political donations from FTX. This is going to be in the news every day for the foreseeable future. The Republicans, now it's tough because Kevin McCarthy, who is in charge of the Republican Party and for the Congress or for the House of Representatives, he's wrapped up in this too. There's several, they call them rhinos, of course. Now, I'm not trying to make this political. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. Almost all the Republicans that received money from FTX were in the rhino category, as a lot of people say, meaning they didn't support President Trump. They either voted him for impeachment or either they considered voting him for impeachment or kind of stumped for him not to be in charge. Kevin McCarthy is actually being accused right now of taking money from FTX in order to stop his party from winning, from the red wave. They should stop the red wave. Kevin McCarthy worked against his own party in some of these elections. So it's very dirty. And the fact that the Republicans are also involved in this, some of it, but once again, it's the Republicans that most of the Republicans don't like. So we'll have to see what happens with that, how accountable they're held. But this is not going anywhere anytime soon. This is just starting. We haven't even got into the Ukrainian money laundering yet. I've seen it. It's real. And this is going to come out as well. This is very bad for a lot of political figures. This is the greatest financial fraud and political corruption case in our entire lives.
Well, let's get into it. If you had to explain what's going on, because a lot of people are saying, yes, there's legitimate like donations to Ukraine to FTX back to politicians. And then I think I even read on Forbes that it's complete baloney. So you're saying you saw it. Forbes is saying it's BS. Give us a little bit like, why are you so confident that that was a very real thing that I assume benefited the Democrats?
Yeah. So look, now, so this is why I want to Republicans. I really don't want to make this. You can't help but make it somewhat political because there's political parties involved. But this is not about who's right, who's wrong. What's about is a system of corruption. And I think if you go back even a little bit further here, and you go back to what happened with GME and AMC. Wow, GMC. That's like Bennifer when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez were together. Which they may be together again. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with celebs. But the point is, if you go back to what happened there with Ken Griffin, obviously creating the synthetic the synthetic shorts to be able to crush the people that were trying to long and make money with the short squeeze and stuff like that. Synthetic assets, right? That's what they were doing. Well, what happened? We came to find out what they were doing. We now know the way that they were making sure that they controlled that market. Jig was up for the first time. The jig was up. Well, what do we do now? How do we raise this money now and give it in political donations and try to control with it? Instead of stock market 1.0, we move on to stock market 2.0. Let's create an exchange to where we can use look at these kids. These kids are smart. They're traders. We're political people. Let's get them to come in. We'll blow this exchange up. They weren't understanding how degenerate the insolvency was going to get probably when they were doing this, because this is not planned. This blew up in everybody's face because of CZ. And so what happens is let's raise a bunch of money out of nothing. Like, let's take our let's create an exchange. There's already a model. Look at Binance. They have a coin. Let's create that coin. And then let's just pump up the value of it. And then we'll have money to loan ourselves that we have to pay back in a token that we make up the price on anyways. And what ends up happening is you just generate all of this money and loans from yourselves. You're actually borrowing the money from the liquid assets, the customer funds, but you're able to make these immense political donations. And I'll tell you, a lot of people don't understand. We were very close. To Sam winning. If Sam, and this is why we were doing this by the end of the month, why we want to put all this out by the end of the month. If Sam was able to buy Voyager and able to buy Celsius, and he had talked about buying Circle, if he was able to start those purchases before this insolvency got discovered, he would have pulled it off. He would have got too big to fail. They would be able to cover up all those assets. And so nobody knew this was happening, but how would he do it? How would he get all of these buy all these companies, political points? He was winning political points left and right. And he was raising a bunch of money. He was giving money out. He was trying to shape the regulation to set up for the federal bit license to be able to be the only game in town that he had a derivatives platform underneath him. He had FTX. He had FTX US. He had a Liquid was another exchange. They had BlockFi. They were in 200 companies or more. Or 200 million, whatever it was. I think it was 225 companies that they were in. They were going to have an empire that they would have been able to cover the insolvency hole. Wow. There are a lot of accusations towards Binance. And this is why Sam said, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Binance, a lot of people believe did the same thing. A lot of people believe Tether did the same thing. But now Binance is too big to fail. I'm not accusing them of that. I don't know that for sure. I haven't seen the numbers, but I've been told that that's what happened. But they're too big to fail now, and they have $70 billion in reserves. Nobody can really touch them, and Sam was not quite there. This was the last chance CZ had to swing on Sam to be able to expose what they were doing, because he was trying to become the only show in town. And when you look at we won't get into the Solana thing today, because that's a whole other thing to unpack. But when you look at what Sam was doing, he consistently attacked all competitors. He wanted to attack all competitors to become the biggest show. How do you become the tallest building in town? Well, you could build one, or you just knock all the rest down, and you could absorb them. And that's what he was doing. Who was next? Coinbase, and then Binance. He sent a warning shot out to Brian Armstrong and said, yeah, we're thinking about buying Coinbase.
Yeah, I remember that.
Brian Armstrong was like, huh? What? Uncle Brian, we call him on the channel, obviously. Uncle Brian. We're going to see him at Thanksgiving tomorrow. So not actually related, but I wish we were. He's bald. I have beautiful hair. So that's how you know we're not related. So the whole thing is Sam was very close to pulling this off. They were creating a big funnel of money to be able to go out. I don't think this was about the Democratic Party. And I know people are going to say that's crazy, right? Democratic Party got the most benefit of this by a long shot. Sam wanted the Democratic Party to win. He did not want Trump to win. But this is not about necessarily the Democratic Party. This is about a system of control that was going to let basically Sam and the people behind him run the United States and shape it how they wanted to. And they just happened to be aligned with the Democratic Party, and that's where they were sending the money to. But you saw they were also capable of sending it to the Republican Party. It was about influence. That's what this was about. It was about influence. And a lot of people involved with the Democratic Party, like, obviously saw a big opportunity here. But you see with Maxine Waters, I don't think she knew this was going on. Like, I don't think most of these Democrats knew this is where this money was coming from. I think if you follow the money here, I think you'll find there are some very high-level people involved with that party that definitely knew and possibly orchestrated this. It was kind of a scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Okay.
We scratch Democratic Party's back. We give them money. They scratch our back and let us control crypto regulation.
That's truly mind-boggling. Just to wrap this up, and so everyone knows, there's a lot of things that are going to be coming out, particularly from BitBoy's channel in the very near future. So we're going to be doing a whole follow-up part 2 interview after that, but be on the lookout for all the things that are going to drop. We can't really publicly disclose it yet, but to wrap up this particular interview, are people going to get arrested? Are there going to be RICO charges? Like, why is no one in handcuffs right now when we're literally talking about the largest financial fraud ever committed by man?
Well, it's a great question. Nobody has the answers. Nobody knows why. But I can tell people that we're going to get the answers. We're going to find these answers. Ultimately, though, Sam is going to prison. Like, he will be going to prison. He's a little delusional right now because he's all methed up on whatever amphetamines he's taking. But it's true. Admittedly, Caroline was like, I don't understand how people live life without being high on amphetamines. They're so dumb. Like, come on, Caroline. Come on, sweet Caroline. So anyways, I do believe Sam is going to prison. He'll probably do 10 to 15 years. He may get off a little easier. He might do 5 to 10. He's going to be the fall guy for this. Dan FriedBerg's going to flip. I believe Caroline's going to flip. I think Caroline's going to flip as well, because obviously being pretty much the only woman that's really wrapped up in all this, she'll probably get, it's just easier to flip because she gets sympathy from people. There's already people out there that are saying, oh, she couldn't be involved in this. She's such a nice, sweet Harry Potter fan, So I think Caroline and Dan FriedBerg will flip. I think Sam Trabucco. I think that Sam Bankman-Fried. And unless Gary Wang escapes out to the CCP where he's made a home at, I think they will all be facing charges. Sam will be the worst. It's just a matter of time. And people I would really encourage people not to jump the gun on this and think that this is over and it's getting buried. Sam's delusional is what's happening. And you can't take what he's saying to be reflective of what the government's doing. I will tell you at this point, from what I know, I do not believe that the Department of Justice is involved in this yet, but they will be. They will be. And one of the things that we are doing here at BitBoy Crypto is we have an evidence package. We have a few different versions of it. I know you've seen one of them. Going back to what I was talking about with the bill, we have very high political backers. These evidence folders are going directly to these political experts, I guess, or maybe former politicians, but they're big in the political game. It's a good way for us to say it. And they're going straight to the regulators' hands, straight to the DOJ's hands.
Wow.
When a major political player comes and hands you that, and you're Gary Gensler, it's not the same as me talking about it on Twitter. And so this stuff is all going to be coming out. I just really encourage people to be patient, but also focused. We had to be patient, but focused. We can't let Sam off the mat. We can't let the parents off the mat. But at the end of the day, somebody's taking the fall for this. I mean, look, people didn't think Elizabeth Holmes was going to go to prison either. And, she's doing 11 years. And if you do the math, just on the financial side, now not involving the blood and the people's health and stuff, but by the financial side, she She got 11 years, I believe. Based on the whole of all of Alameda, that would put Sam Bankman-Fried at about, I think, 780 years in prison.
Oh, absolutely brutal. And what a perfect way to end this particular discussion. For anyone who's interested and you're looking for BitBoy's information, it will all be in the link of this video. So his Twitter, his YouTube channel, his website, it will all be there, and everything we talked about in this particular chat. As always, I truly appreciate your time. We'll be talking soon. And hey, happy Thanksgiving. And I can't wait for version 2 of how this is all going to play out. Very exciting times.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Gobble, gobble. People need to be thinking about what you're thankful. I know the market's down, and it's okay. Those of us that have been through this, especially in crypto, we have a different kind of cycle than the stock market has. To everybody else, just be patient. I think the bottom is in pretty soon, actually. Maybe by the end of next month, we get some Fed rate stuff. They're slowing down the hikes. Just everybody be patient, and it's not the time to pour all your money into these markets. But, when they talk about, blood in the water, and this is where the people get rich, people need to be paying attention, because we think there's going to be some really good opportunities coming up. And we think by next Thanksgiving, you're going to be really thankful you stuck through all this.
Absolutely love to hear it. Have a good one.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.